Στα τέλη Ιανουαρίου του 2020, λίγο μετά το άνοιγμα του Κέντρου Επιχειρήσεων Έκτακτης Ανάγκης στο Κέντρο Ελέγχου και Πρόληψης Νοσημάτων, η ιατρική εικονογράφος Alissa Eckert και ο συνεργάτης της Dan Higgins ήρθαν αντιμέτωποι με μια τεράστια και επίγουσα πρόκληση. Μέσα σε μια εβδομάδα έπρεπε να δημιουργήσουν μια οπτική αναπαράσταση του νέου κορονοϊού, του νέου, μεγάλου, αόρατου εχθρού. Τη δεδομένη χρονική στιγμή η διασπορά του ιού δεν είχε φτάσει ακόμα σε επίπεδο πανδημίας και το κοινό δεν ήταν επαρκώς ενημερωμένο. Για την Alissa Eckert, επομένως, ήταν σημαντικό να εξισορροπήσει την σοβαρότητα της απειλής με μια εικόνα εντυπωσιακής ομορφιάς. Να δημιουργήσει μια εικόνα οικία και αληθινή, επιστημονικά ακριβή, αλλά και αρκετά τολμηρή και δραματική. Ικανή να τραβήξει την προσοχή ενός ανθρώπου που σκρολάρει αμέριμνο στα social media. Κάτι που κανείς δεν θα μπορούσε να ξεχάσει. Το αποτέλεσμα της δουλειάς των δύο ιατρικών εικονογράφων καθόρισε την οπτικοποίηση της πιο θανατηφόρας πρόκλησης που αντιμετωπίζει η δημόσια υγεία τον τελευταίο αιώνα. Η γκρίζα σφαίρα με τα απειλητικά κόκκινα αγκάθια εμφανίζεται πλέον χιλιάδες φορές την ημέρα σε κάθε πιθανό πλαίσιο. Η Alissa Eckert φιλοξενείται στο Athens Science Festival για να αποκαλύψει τις διαδικασίες και τα μυστικά που κρύβονται πίσω από τη δημιουργία της. Μέσα από το παράδειγμα της οπτικής αναπαράστασης του νέου κορονοϊού, η ιατρική εικονογράφος που δημιούργησε την πιο ευρέως αναγνωρισμένη εικόνα του θανατηφόρου ιού παγκοσμίως, θα αναδείξει το ρόλο και τη σημασία της τέχνης του art illustration στην επιστήμη. Τη συζήτηση συντονίζει ο Μανώλης Μπαμπάτσικος, ειδικός ιατρικής οπτικοποίησης και ιδιοκτήτης της 3D Med World.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here today with us, all such this audience. We have here today Alissa Eckert, a medical visualization expert, a very famous person. We are having the honor here today to be with us, Alissa. Thank you very much. Thank you so much also Athens Science Festival for this extremely organized sessions. We are very honored also for this session because it's very significant to have all of you here today listening all these significant topics. Our topic today has about the art of illustration in science. I'm the moderator. My name is Manolis Babatsikos, and I have a lot of experience in digital visual effects with working years in AAA games, with including Traveler Tales, Lego World, and Warner Brothers, Time Warner. I came back in Greece before 5 years to start my own company based on medical animation and medical simulations. Until then, I have a lot of companies working with medical simulations, training centers, and we are trying to visualize a new world of medical and transfer all this knowledge of the medical field with a very friendly way to most of the people. So this is our target. Today we have Alissa Eckert. Alissa Eckert is a medical illustrator. She's working for CDC with a lot of experience, along with her partner, Dan Higgins. They visualized the icon, the simulation of the coronavirus, and aside of only for the pandemic, she has a lot of illustrations, a lot of experience, and can't wait to listen to her about her presentation and her experience to share with us. We will have also some questions after her presentation, so stay tuned with us because we are very proud to have her in our today sections. Thank you very much. Alissa.
Great. Thanks, Manolis. That was a great introduction. So like you said, my name is Alissa Eckert, and so I want to talk to you today about medical illustration and the art of science in illustration. And I do want to express my appreciation for my invitation to speak today. And it's just so important to be able to talk about the small field of medical illustration and what it is that we actually do as medical illustrators. So I am one of the medical illustrators at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is my team of medical illustrators that I work with. And so, yeah, some of you may recognize this image, but before we talk about that, I thought I'd let you know how I actually got into this interesting world of medical illustration and what kind of person it actually takes to do this. So as a kid, I was always drawing, and I just wanted to show you some examples I did as a child. And so on the right, these are images from when I was around 13 or so, just sketching in my notebook at school during classes. And the dog on the left, I was around 15 or so. But while I was drawing these kinds of drawings, I was also taking advanced classes in science all throughout high school, classes like biology, comparative anatomy, zoology, physics, and chemistry, just because I liked them. I wanted to take those kind of classes. That's where I was interested in. And just for comparison's sakes, these are drawings of dogs and similar drawings that I would do today. Do you see there's been a lot of training in between? So when I went on to college, I was originally a biology major planning on being a veterinarian. But then I learned about medical illustration in the undergraduate program of scientific illustration at the University of Georgia. So I thought this probably would be a better path for me, would combine my two skills. And so I applied to the program and moved to this new school and city to pursue my goal of a master's in medical illustration. And so then I went on to apply to the graduate program at the Medical College of Georgia and was accepted into the program. And it was a class of 7 people. And it was a 2-year intensive program studying both medicine and art. And then right after that, I started at CDC, and I've been there for 15 years now. And so I wanted to show you some examples of the work that we've done at CDC. And there's quite a broad range of areas and topics that we cover there. So first, I've done personally over probably 100 birth defects images, illustrations. And just to show you, these need to be sort of soft images that parents can engage with to learn about the defects of their babies, and something that was easier to look at than photographs. So you can see the soft use of tones to help make the imagery more approachable, because those photographs can be pretty hard to look at. And here are some examples of some studies of ferrets. This would be for a more scientific type of audience. So it's more detailed oriented. These images may appear in things like a scientific journal or a necropsy guide, things like that. And I do a lot of animal work, and because they act as vectors for diseases. So you can see some mice, ferrets, monkeys, and bats. So a broad range of illustration. And then here's some of our 3D pathogen work. So you can see the norovirus here, HPV, amoeba, Campylobacter, and Cryptosporidium. And these kind of jump out on the page to you and kind of give you the ick factor. And we even do 3D animation work. And so here's an animation of the hair cells damaging from a loud sound. And so in 2019, we actually created 3D images of the deadliest of bacteria for the antibiotic resistance threats report. So this was 21 3D medical images of antibiotic resistant bacteria, and it was designed to be shown small all the way up to poster size. Each deliverable had to have both a light and a dark background, so various formats and sizes could be used across different platforms and in various contexts. The white was used more for scientific audience versus the editorial style that's on the right, and it's used across CDC internally and externally. You see these on the news and that sort of thing often. And here are some of the inside pages from the actual report that we did. And I thought this was good to show because it helps demonstrate how the images were used and help explain the scientific data. So it helps sort of bring the information to life on the page. And then social media. These are our trading cards that we call them. They're profiling the most urgent of the bugs. And these are our Instagram stories, but they were made in several social media sizes for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's used to catch the viewer with the movement and catch them quickly and draw their eye to the information. And then they were even brought into large-scale poster-size images. And so these images are actually from the UN General Assembly at the AMR Challenge in New York in 2019. And then I also do 3D models that could be printed or casted. And the printed ones we created in 3D Studio Max and then 3ds Max and then printed on a powder printer or resin printers. So the foot and the arm that you see there were actually casted from silicone and then airbrushed to give lifelike features to them. And these can be for various uses, for educational pieces, training modules, things like that. So you may wonder, what exactly is a medical illustrator? Medical illustration is truly an interdisciplinary field. It's a creative combination of visual arts, the health sciences, education, and communications. A medical illustrator translates complex biological and medical information into visual representations, which people can easily understand. And it's all while maintaining aesthetics, accuracy, and clarity throughout. So a medical illustrator also acts as an illustrator, a consultant, and an administrator for their roles. They are both the artist and the scientist. So Leonardo da Vinci was the first medical illustrator in sort of the contemporary sense. He melded a scientific understanding of anatomy with great artistic skill. So his 800 anatomical drawings went unpublished until the 1800s. And so here are early examples of anatomy exploration from the 1500s. And you can see the skin layers being pulled back to reveal the musculature underneath. So you can see there was always this curiosity for understanding was there. And here's another example. Is a flayed cadaver holds his skin in one hand and a dissecting knife in the other. And you'll notice all the detailed musculature underneath. And then after Da Vinci, Andreas Vesalius was a Belgian-born anatomist and physician born in 1514 in a family of physicians. And he's considered the father of modern anatomy. And so he began his career by authoring and publishing the Corpus Fabrica Humanae, the most well-known book of anatomy ever. So in here is a 17th century engraving of a pregnant woman is dissected so that the flaps resemble petals of a flower with the baby at the center. And then in 1600s, anatomists began to collect and exhibit bodies and body parts. The human body sort of became the sculpture, and they were put on display. And then by the 1800s, anatomy became more investigational. It was now more defined as science rather than art. And so you can see in the cadaver drawing on the upper right, all the labeled parts, it's like they're being studied. So it's sort of a transition from this art form into now an actual study. And then at the end of the 19th century, a young artist was persuaded to leave Germany and pursue medical illustrations at Johns Hopkins University. And he basically defined the profession of medical illustration. He started the first school of medical illustration and became the director of art as applied to medicines at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. And his name is Max Bradel. And in the 19th century, new printing techniques allowed illustrators to work in a variety of media. Color printing was refined and became more practical. so the modern medical illustrator works in a variety of disciplines, but not limited to universities, hospitals, forensics, law firms, and animation, and freelance, and in government even. And there's a variety of disciplines of what a medical illustrator can actually work in. And then in North America, there are 4 accredited schools for medical illustration. As you can see the list here, it's Johns Hopkins, and then the Georgia program at Augusta University, the University of Toronto, and then University of Illinois at Chicago. And so here are a list of schools in North America that provide certificate programs on the left and then actual undergraduate degrees on the right. And then the following universities and institutions around the world offer programs in medical or scientific illustration. And you can see here, there's some in Italy and France, in the UK, in the Netherlands, and Switzerland. And the coursework is typically made up of classes often with the medical students. Subjects are science, anatomy, pathology, physiology, embryology, neuroanatomy, along with surgical illustration. And other classes tend to include color theory, instructional design, photography, interactive media development. It could be 3D modeling and web design, along with traditional drawing and computer applications as well. And then there's the Association of Medical Illustrators, which is an international organization currently it has 868 members. And it's a great organization to help encourage and educate the profession. And there's a yearly conference where everyone gets together, and it's in the US. And so we talk about medical illustration and share everything and keep the profession going. And here's a list of partnering organizations around the world. So I wanted to get back to COVID now and explain our role with emergency response. So a lot of the work I do involves emergency response work, and CDC's ability to communicate consistent, accurate, and actionable information during an emergency is a key countermeasure during a public health emergency. Our emergency response and pandemic planning work as medical illustrators dates back to H5N1, then H1N1, the Haiti earthquake with cholera, and then Ebola and Zika, and now, of course, coronavirus. This is a picture from the EOC at CDC. So at times like this, it's really an all hands on deck situation around CDC. It can require long hours, on-call duty for nights and weekends, and immediate turnarounds for work. And I'm talking like within the day. It'd be a few hours we need an illustration done. So the information has to get out to the public. And these responses are typically carried out through a campaign with branding and a design style guide with formatted templates and everything. So there's large teams that go into this. So the Joint Information Center, or we call it the JIC for short, is a 24/7 emergency preparedness unit comprised of cross-agency staff. And so the JIC responds to emergencies by collecting and creating and clearing and distributing health messages to several specific audiences and to the public at large. And so this is where we come in. We work directly with the JIC on creating the imagery for the messaging that will then go out to the public. And so in late January, just after the Emergency Operations Center was opened at CDC, we were called upon to create an image of the novel coronavirus, something that could represent this unseen, unknown public enemy to the world. And so we set up our communication goals. So here's what we actually knew. We knew we were making basically a public health emergency alert. We needed people to notice and pay attention to the looming threat and take it seriously. We needed to invoke an emotional response to help people grasp the gravity of the virus and the situation. And at the time, not a lot of people knew what was going on and how much of a threat this actually was. So the hope was to draw people back to the CDC to find out further information. And so we also needed to capture our viewers' attention and do it quickly. When the virus is seen on the news or website, scrolling on through social media, it's fighting against a lot of sources of information out there, and it needs to be able to grab that viewer instantly. So like on Facebook, you only have 1 to 3 seconds to grab your viewer's attention, right? So we had to design all this within a week time. And so at first we questioned whether to design an actual generic coronavirus, since we were so early in the game, there were so many unknowns, and there was really not a lot of information out at the time. And then the full genome had just been posted on GenBank and GenAid, so we could see in the phylogenetic tree here that it was distantly related to the SARS. And so we got confirmation on that and then moved forward. And so because we both have, Dan Higgins and I both have a basic understanding of viral structures, we then knew what to look for. We needed proteins to incorporate into this. So we went to the protein data bank, and the PDB is a repository for 3D dimensional structural data of biological molecules. And there was nothing representing the SARS-CoV-2 out at that time. It hadn't been put up yet. So we used the S and E proteins from SARS, and then because they look exactly the same from that level of view that we were describing. And then we made our own representation for the M protein. So you can see in the figures here, we started out with our PDB file in Chimera in upper left, and then optimized it into ZBrush in the middle where we refined it. And then we put it all together in 3ds Max. And the 3ds Max is sort of where the magic happens with all the lighting in the studio set up and everything. And so once we had all our parts built, we needed to add the art. And so to achieve this, we relied on a few principles of design. So we started with detail. We reduced the amount of detail down to just what was necessary. We didn't want to have all this extraneous information in there that would just confuse the viewer. So then we started to work with realism, using depth of field, lighting, and texturing. It creates a sort of a sense of belief that way. And then we started to work with contrast, and in the colors and then the lighting, and it creates a sense of drama and helps elicit that emotional response. And then we wanted to work with our emphasis so we could distinguish the structures from each other. So each protein stood out in its own way. And that's also the color. It helps convey the serious tone. And we did not want it to feel friendly, really, because people wouldn't necessarily pay attention. It might lose some of its credibility. And red we kind of went with because it's a health alert. And other protein, the orange and the yellows sort of complemented that red. And then the gray surface, it really made those proteins pop. So it all helped focus on that main corona S protein, and the sort of the identifying feature of the virus. So in our final steps, we submitted the image to our quality assurance and quality control expert to verify it met CDC's expectations. And then it went back through clearance and through the JIC to make sure everyone agreed on the science and the aesthetics. And so here's a look at the branding package that was actually being developed at the same time we were working on the virus by the graphic designers. And so we knew it was something that's going to be easily reproduced and adjusted for the many designers working on the response. So we knew what it was going to need to work cohesively with. I tried some of these cooler tones that you see there, but they just did not work at all. The image really fell completely flat, and it just did not speak to me. So I knew it had to be these warmer, bolder colors that you see now. And so I want to show you some of the additional deliverables we decided to develop as part of the whole package that was being delivered. So of course, we had that single close-up shot. We decided that it'd be good to have sort of a scene for editorial purposes. So this is like a group interacting in its natural environment. And so here are some secondary deliverables, animated versions. They were for the designers and the editors at CDC to use in the materials. And the lower was actually posted on CDC's website as B-roll that anyone can download and use. Maybe like the news would use it as over-the-shoulder graphics or anything to support things that people need to work with coronavirus. And we also did 3D prints up in the left-hand corner, and then a vector illustration version in the lower right, depending on the type of artwork that it had to be placed in with. And so you can still see it today residing in its place on the homepage of the CDC website. It has this sort of green overlay over it right now. And so, but when it was actually first released with the digital press kit from CDC, it began to be immediately downloaded. And the PHIL, the Public Health Image Library at CDC, where it was downloaded from, it had an increase of 40 to 56% in the first 2 months after the release. So the average would be between 15,000 and 20,000 downloads per week. And all of a sudden, the site during the weeks of February 23rd, 2020, there were 24,000, and during the week of March 1st, there were 31,000 visitors, which translates into about a 40 to 56% increase, which is amazing. And so all within a matter of days, it started appearing on major news sites around the U.S. It was on AP and Reuters, Stat News, The Drudge Report, CNN, BBC, Fox, MSN homepage. And then as the icon for the ABC News special report with the task force. And it started appearing on covers of magazines. This is New Scientist. It was also on the cover of Time magazine. And then in newspaper prints. This is a newspaper section from the Atlanta Journal. And then local news stations across this country started using it everywhere. And then even made it to local community materials. This is for school districts, giving alerts to parents. And even across the world, this is TV and newspapers in the Netherlands. I have images that I gathered. And it even made its way into general television programs. So this is a television show called The Doctors. And then we even saw it on comedy television like Saturday Night Live, and it was on HBO special John Oliver. I've seen it on different documentaries on Netflix, and so it's popping. It's everywhere. And then the news started becoming more interested in us, the artists. I had tons of interviews with radio, newspapers, magazines, and podcasts all over the world. I had interviews with Canada, UK, Norway, Brazil. Even our governor posted about us. But and then there's even a CNN article here. You can see that here. The illustrators who gave coronavirus its face. But what was the most interesting was the spread in art culture within the actual public. People started expressing their feelings and making things. And here's some of the little hacky sack-like knitted creatures that people were making. Even homemade piñatas. I've seen this quite a few times. And then people were even getting tattoos of the virus, that's pretty cool. But my favorite are the cookies. So Jay's Bakery and Cafe in Florida was shut down for 2 weeks, and then the new normal started and they reopened. And so they made these for fun to sort of lighten the mood and handle with humor like Floridians typically do. People wanted these cookies like crazy, and it sold out everywhere. And people started having these COVID quarantine birthdays at home. And so she started making Corona nuts, which are like donuts, and it just expanded from there. So they're her Corona nuts. And so, business took off in all sorts of pandemic items, and they even made care packages for graduates with these cookies. So it's really cool to see how it helped their business. And so a professor teaching at an infectious disease class in American University had his students draw their interpretations of the virus, and without him showing mine. And this is what they came up with. So it's interesting to see how it really influences people's minds at this point, because they're pretty similar, right? But the best part is inspiring the future medical illustrators. I received these drawings from a 5-year-old girl in California that loves to draw viruses. And I was saying they were better than some of the actual scientist drawings I've even seen. They're really cute. So she did a great job. Vector bacteriophage. And so some of the achievements and highlights of the image, Design Block actually called it one of the top illustration trends of 2021, medical illustration and pandemic themes. And then Nature magazine called it one of the best science images of 2020. And it's won a few awards so far. And this is from the Association of Medical Illustrators 2020 Salon. It received the Certificate of Merit. And then New York Design Awards, it won the Gold Award. And then the Design Museum's Beasley Design of the Year Award for the graphics category. And it's even become sort of a graphical representation of the generic term of virus on Wikipedia now. So, and that's basically where we stand today. So sort of the take home for this is it's amazing to see how art really can infiltrate the world, and what an honor it actually is to educate the masses through art and have a direct impact on people's health and safety. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for inviting me today to be here and allowing me to share the development of the coronavirus images. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival too.
Lisa, thank you so much. I'm very impressed. I totally understand this world, and it's a huge exposure. You should be very proud with your team and CDC, but also Autodesk should be very proud of using the software. But your work is such a motivation for young people, and I have a few questions. Are you using medical illustration to help doctors from new techniques and innovative methods for procedures, for medical procedures or operations?
Me personally, we don't do a lot of operation stuff at CDC, but in the field, absolutely. There's tons of that going on, explaining new methods. That's a perfect example of what a medical illustrator can do. Visualize these things that haven't been seen before, and instructional, making things in an instructional manner, a series, a step-by-step guide. So for sure.
And for young people and for young students, it's such a motivation for using these pictures and seeing these images and how you can start off start from illustration until the 3D printing, or put your own colors and your own exposure on this. What's your opinion? What's your view about the young people that they want to start a new career on this? What they have to do as first steps, the basic steps, and then be a medical artist in the future?
Yeah, one of the most important things is to get your foundation art skills down. It's really important to be able to draw, and drawing still lifes or practicing figure drawings and things like that. The human body is a difficult art form to draw, so really practicing on that. In school, we used to one of the main things we used to work on was hands and feet, because those are super difficult to get just right. And so that's good practice to do, and to build a portfolio. You have to have a portfolio to get into school of certain criteria. And then also you need to have some knowledge and understanding of science and be able to get through science classes as well. So having a lot of foundation biology and chemistry classes, work your way there.
It's very interesting. And, it's such with this world we're living now, in these days, technology is such an improving section. And we're always finding that medical illustrations and medical animations can be combined very well organized with virtual reality or mixed reality or augmented reality. Are you using these technologies in your steps nowadays? And how you see the future on this?
Yeah, we're sort of in the R&D phase in my team at CDC with virtual reality. We are investigating it and working with it, but there actually is another team, medical illustration team, that is a full VR setup team at CDC, and they are doing things like training for the labs, virtual training in the lab. So it's medical illustration mixed with virtual reality is a big thing. It's a whole field of it going on. There's companies specifically for that out there. So it's definitely in the future, and it's definitely something we always talk about at the conferences. It's where we're headed. So it's definitely something we have to investigate more.
Yeah, it's very significant. Yeah. So yeah, for the students, for example, I didn't know until now that there are universities that students can be educated on the medical field, on the medical illustration. It's very significant for young people, and especially because I'm also teaching some courses on medical animation, and they can see that the young students, they have a lot of talent, drawing stuff, and they really like medical section. So in this case, they have just to follow and grab this gap and try to fill it with the magical dream they have, but the knowledge they're already earning with the drawing and animation and everything. So I think it's very significant to have mentors from universities and the complete education from these fields.
Yeah, I'm amazed to see some of what the students are doing already. Just when I was in school, it's years beyond what I was doing. So just imagine where we'll be.
Yeah, that's always like fantastic, like to see works and your work traveling, but also to see young people, like trying to be motivated from this field and follow your path. Yeah, I'm super excited. I think I'm very happy to meet you. We are very pleased to have you here. So I think that Athens Science Festival, will be transferred all this knowledge to most of the people. So we are so happy to have you, Alissa, here. Thank you very much. Some questions will be followed, and you will be asked probably more questions later on from the audience. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. I welcome any questions.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day, Alissa. Bye-bye.